Producer's Program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Media Services, the City of Oshkosh, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everyone, welcome to Oshkosh. Cheryl Hentz here, and very pleased to welcome back one guest who's been here a couple of times in the past, and two new guests that he has brought with him this evening. So to my right is an old hand at this. Steve Blake is here. He's with, previously when he was here, he was with an organization called Wisconsin Fathers, and he's going to tell us why he's with a group tonight called Dads of Wisconsin, Inc., and we'll talk a little bit about what happened with Wisconsin Fathers and so on and so forth. And also joining him to talk about Dads of Wisconsin is Sharon Dillon and her daughter Cicada Dillon. So welcome to all of you for being here. We appreciate it very much for coming.
Thanks for having us.
So, you know, the last time, as I mentioned, that you were here, you were representing, Wisconsin Fathers.
Right, Wisconsin Fathers for Children and Families.
Yep. And the shortened version was Wisconsin Fathers, and now you're with Dads of Wisconsin. So why don't you just kind of give us an abbreviated version of what happened and why the change? Is Wisconsin Fathers still in existence?
They are.
Okay.
They are.
Tell us what happened.
The Wisconsin Fathers for Children and Families is pretty much basically a support group.
Mm-hmm.
They have a hotline, and dads who are going through the system can give them a call. They have monthly meetings where they can sit down and talk and get some advice on how to proceed and that sort of thing. But because they are a 501c3 nonprofit, they're pretty much prohibited from doing extensive lobbying, and they're totally prohibited from getting involved in political activity.
Okay.
Dads of Wisconsin, which we formed in January, is seeking, we haven't gotten it yet, but we're seeking 501c4 IRS status, which will allow us to concentrate as lobbyists as our main function or our main activity excuse me, during the session. And also we can get involved in political activity. We also have a PAC, a Political Action Committee, which is Wisconsin Dads PAC, and that's how we support friendly legislators or legislator wannabes during the election season.
Okay. So you will be actively, will you be recruiting politicians or people to run for office?
What we
or
do
will you
is
just be looking at those who are running and...
We go down the list and see who's running, and we interview the candidates and talk a little bit about our goals and aspirations, and see if they're willing to be supportive. And several of the candidates that we're supporting this year are incumbents,
Mm-hmm.
and we know by their track record that they are sympathetic to our plight, and that they believe in equal treatment for parents. For example, for a candidate, Ed Thompson is running, I think, in the 31st Senate District. Sharon, Cicada, and I all sat down with him and talked with him for half an hour, 45 minutes or so. And like I said, we explained who we are and what we represent, and based on his answers, we've issued an endorsement in his favor. We've also endorsed Steve Castell from Sheboygan, Don Pridemore from Milwaukee area, Robin Vos, who's in southeast Wisconsin,
Mm-hmm.
and we're considering several others.
Okay. Have you made or taken a position yet on the gubernatorial race? I mean,
We've
I
been-
realize there's a primary that needs to be happening here.
We've
but-
issued invitations to all 3 gubernatorial candidates to come and talk with our group. To date, I've not heard back from Tom Barrett. Scott Walker is interested, but we have to work out a time and a place and a date. And Mark Newman is too busy.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, very good. So, at some point, will you possibly, say you don't find a candidate out there that you like for a particular office. I know a lot of times PACs will sort of seek out and try to recruit candidates as well. Do you see that as something that may be a possibility if you don't like candidates at some point in the future for different offices?
Well,
or-
not this election season. It's
Right.
too late.
Right, right.
But 2 years from now, who knows?
Okay,
You know,
so it's
maybe.
it's a possibility. Okay, all right. Well, let's before we get into what more you guys do, let's talk a little bit about why you and your daughter are involved here, Sharon. Now, how long have you been involved? Were you involved with Wisconsin Fathers, or is this a brand new involvement for you?
I started out with Wisconsin Fathers,
Okay.
looking for information on how to go about helping my husband to represent himself pro se with Wisconsin Fathers. And so I went onto their chat site and was asking for some kind of direction. And I was directed to Steve Blake on their phone line. And as I got to talking with some of the fathers and with some of the women on the chat site, I became more involved with fathers' rights and in wanting to change the legislation. And when Steve and Ken and Joe decided to start Dads of Wisconsin, I was right there, because that's where I was leaning towards as well.
Sure.
And when my husband and I started becoming more involved with Dads of Wisconsin, Cicada was right there, wanting to become more involved as well. She's always had an interest in political activity. So when we
Wow. Okay.
when we wanted to go talk to Ed Thompson, Cicada wanted to come along as well.
Well, that's what we need, is young people getting involved at an early age. You're 14?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So tell us about, well, first of all, where's this love of politics come from? Some would say you're crazy, you know.
Yeah. Well, I'm not really sure where it comes from, but I've just always found a need to know about what's going on in my own community and everywhere else also. And getting involved with politics is a really good way to find out about these things, but also try to help change them.
Okay, all right. And so as a volunteer with the group, what exactly do you do?
I am the social media manager, I
Okay.
guess.
Wow. Well, a pretty impressive title for a 14-year-old. What kinds of things do you do with that?
I manage the MySpace pages and the YouTube accounts and all the social media accounts and pages and all that.
I suspect of us at the table, you're probably the only one who knows how to do that too, probably.
Why do you think she's got the title she's got?
It's amazing what kids your age and thereabouts know about this stuff. I mean, I'm lost when it comes to
Me
some
too.
of that stuff. So.
Luckily, we have Cicada.
All right, and so how many hours a month do you put into this?
I'm not sure. I really can't keep track.
It probably varies too.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah.
I would think maybe during campaign season it's a little bit more, but who knows?
Plus, we're setting stuff up still.
Sure.
We're still a
Okay.
relatively new organization,
Okay.
which is where we really need her skills, is getting all these things started.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so the two organizations are still going to exist and coexist. They will have some overlapping features a little bit, if you will, but they are also going to be very separate from each other.
That's correct.
Okay.
I mean, we still have the same goals, and but like I said, Wisconsin Fathers is more of a support group, and we're more of an advocacy group.
Okay. So before we get into some real issues about custody issues, child placement issues, what have you, is there anything else about specifically Wisconsin or Dads of Wisconsin? You know, I should ask you, you know, how you're funding yourselves. Are you getting grants, or where does the funding come for?
Donations.
Okay.
Donations.
Okay. Solely
And-
donations?
Yeah, one of the problems
Okay.
with being a 501c4 is that your donations are not tax deductible because you're doing political work and trying to influence legislation and that sort of thing. And that's that's a problem. Sharon and I were talking about this before the program, so I want to make a comment on that issue too.
Well, with dads, it's really difficult because not only are they generally trying to pay their child support, but they're also usually trying to support a second household. So dads have a tendency to have their funds really stretched to the limit.
Sure.
And with that, they tend to not be able to do a lot of the volunteering with an organization either. So with our organization, we need volunteers and we need the donations. So we, for our funding purposes, the donations are where we really need the help the most. So what we would want to ask people who really want to see the change in the legislature is, if you can't volunteer, please go on the website, and there's a button there for PayPal. Send in the donations.
Okay. And so as far as donations go, are you doing fundraising events as well?
Basically, it's just appeals out to the members.
Okay.
We have, I mean, we're not broke. We have enough money to function. We don't have the donations to the political action committee that we would like to see, although there are limits imposed by the Government Accountability Board. You can only raise so much money, and
Right.
and lots of rules and regulations and hoops to jump through. So, and like I said, we're new. We've only been in existence 7 months. This is our first election cycle, and we're just basically sticking our toe in and learning a lot as we go along.
Okay.
We have made donations to several, 3 I guess, candidates so far,
Okay.
which they are appreciative of. But like I said, it's a learning process for us. None of us have ever done this before. So this election cycle is, let's see how it goes. Again, 2 years hence, hopefully we'll be in a much better position to do our work.
Okay.
A lot of it depends on how well we do this time.
Okay. All right. Well, let's talk. You know, Sharon, you've mentioned a couple times about changing legislation. So before we get too far down that road, let's talk about the current legislation as it is. Fathers, as we've learned from the couple times that you've been here in the past, don't always get a fair shake in child custody issues. So can you
That's
talk
why
a
we're
little
here.
bit about the placement of things?
Well, the current law says that judges are supposed to maximize placement between the parents. Unfortunately, a lot of judges, not all of them, but a lot of them are still under the impression that mom is the nurturer, dad is the paycheck, and consequently 80-85% of the time mom is declared the primary caregiver. She gets primary physical placement, and dad is relegated to visitor status. He can see the kids every other weekend and maybe 4 hours on Wednesday. And of course he gets to pay the child support. What we want, and what we're going to be pushing for, and this is one of the things we've discussed with the candidates this year, is we'd like to see a rebuttable presumption of equal placement for parents after divorce or separation in the case of non-married parents.
Okay. You know, we hear so often about joint custody being given. Is that kind of a misnomer?
There's two kinds of custody. There's legal custody,
Mm-hmm.
which in Wisconsin there is a presumption that equal legal custody is in the best interest of the children. Then there's what used to be known as physical custody. Now it's called physical placement. Okay, these are two separate issues.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, in Wisconsin there's a presumption that equal legal custody, which is decisions about a child's religion, where they go to school, medical decisions, that sort of thing. Excuse me. And then there's physical placement, and that's where the child lives most of the time.
And that's usually with the mother.
That's usually with the mother.
Okay. So when they talk in terms of joint custody, it's not really a situation where we have, a child or children, if there's more than one, going to mom's house or being at mom's house 4 days a week and then being at dad's place 3 days a week, or 4 days a week and 3 days a week at mom's. That's not what that means?
That can be what that means, and that is the kind of thing that we are striving for.
Mm-hmm.
There's a YouTube video which is on our YouTube site. It's called My Two Homes, and it's about a 14-year-old girl in Brooklyn, I think, who spends half the time with mom, half the time with dad. She has a bedroom in each house, and both parents live reasonably close to each other, so that she can go home from school to one or go home from school to the other. And she keeps, it's kind of cute, she keeps stuffed animals that her dad gave her at her mom's house, and stuffed animals that her mom gave her at her dad's house, so that when she's one or the other and she wants to think of the other parent, she just picks up her. And the parents apparently get along, at least to the extent that they don't let their differences interfere with raising their child. And she says she wouldn't have it any other way.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently this started when she was young, and so she's been living that way for a number of years, and she's perfectly happy with it.
Okay. What are some of the challenges that dads face in court? I mean, obviously this is, the umbrella problem, if you will. But, can you maybe bore into that a little bit more, Steve, and tell us what some of the specific challenges are that dads are facing?
First of all, like I said, dads are up against the bias that moms are clearly parents and dads are superfluous, which is reflected in a lot of the popular culture, especially nowadays. If you look on commercials and TV shows, dad is often a buffoon, if not worse, but mom is the one who keeps things together. We all know that's not really true, but unfortunately this is the kind of attitude that fathers have to overcome. Mm-hmm. When they're in court. They have to prove that they're a good parent, whereas with mom it's just assumed that she's a good parent. Our view is that the courts need to assume that both parents are good parents, and both parents care equally about their children, and both parents have their children's best interest in heart. Another issue that fathers, for the most part, and again, there are mothers in the situation too. Okay, I want to make that clear. It's not just dads, but it's majority of dads face this. And another situation that dads find themselves in is accusations of domestic violence. The lawyers refer to as the nuclear weapon. Mom goes and claims that she's afraid, or that the man hit her, or pushed her, or yelled at her, and asks for a restraining order, or a TRO, temporary restraining order, which are almost always issued. I've seen documentation where judges freely admit that as long as you fill out the paperwork correctly, we'll issue it. There was a famous case involving David Letterman here a couple of years ago, where a lady in Arizona or New Mexico claimed that he was harassing her through the TV set. And so she went to court, and next thing David Letterman knew is he was restrained from harassing this woman through the TV set. Now, of course, David Letterman's got a lot of money, got a lot of lawyers, he got it squashed. When the media asked the judge, why did you issue an order like this, that was what he said. She filled out the paperwork correctly. And if that happens, then I issue it. Now, if you get a restraining order against you, all of a sudden, the high hill that you've been trying to climb is now a steep cliff. Because judges, well, I'm not going to turn the kids over to a batterer, even though there's been no proof that anybody's been battered. And there is no disincentive to women doing this, because I've never heard of a case where a woman makes a false accusation in family court and then gets prosecuted for perjury, for lying under oath, or even when you fill out the forms, because you have to sign it and it's an affidavit and you have to swear that it's true.
Right.
But nobody checks. They simply they err on the side of caution, is what the judges will tell you. They'll say, well, we want to make sure that, I don't want to make a mistake and end up in the newspaper. When if I didn't issue an order and something does happen. So they simply err on the side of caution. What they don't understand is the damage that's done by taking that attitude. It's easy to see the damage is done when a judge makes a mistake, doesn't issue a restraining order, and then a woman ends up injured or dead. Makes the papers, makes the news. What doesn't attract media attention is the many, many cases where a man is excluded from his home, excluded from his contact with his children, all based on nothing. These men are damaged, maybe not physically, although I've known situations where this has driven guys to suicide. Men love their children just as much as mom does.
Sure.
And to have the state come in and say, we don't trust you with your own children, therefore you're not allowed to see them. And if you try to see them, we'll arrest you and throw you in jail.
Well, of course, this affects the kids, too. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. They look at dad and they go, well, the police came and took my dad away, so gosh, something must be wrong with him. I mean, you raise your children to believe in the system and believe in the authorities, and policemen are your friends and all this sort of thing. So this damages the relationship with one of their parents. It's also difficult for the children because they think, well, I'm half that person. I'm half dad, I'm half mom, so that must mean maybe there's something wrong with me. Again, damaging to the children's psychologically, not to mention the damage that it does to the family dynamic.
Sure. Let's, I want to shift gears here a little bit and bring you folks back into this. I don't want to pry, but you are here, and so I'm going to ask the question. If there's something that you're not comfortable talking about, just please let me know. But do you have a good relationship with your ex-husband?
I don't have an ex-husband.
Okay, it's a current husband?
My husband and I have been married since 1981. In our situation, it was an extramarital situation.
Okay.
The children that I have, Cicada included, are all our children, and the child that the court problems are about is the child from the outside relationship.
Okay, so this is not a situation that necessarily, it's not directly affecting you. It's indirectly affecting you, but the child involved, you're saying, is...
She lives with her mother.
Okay, all right, okay. So I guess that lends the question then, why is this so important to you then, since this doesn't... It affects you, but not as directly as it does your half-sibling.
Half-sister.
Well, really, it does directly affect the whole family.
Okay, tell us
Because
about
really, it's like if the dad is taken away from the child that's in between, then the whole other family is also taken away. And once you have that connection, it's just, that is so mentally damaging, you know? It's incomparable to anything.
Mm-hmm. So was there a court order then that kept your husband away from Cicada as well? Or how did this affect you as opposed to your half-sister?
Right from the beginning, we decided that she was going to be part of our family
Okay.
because she's half my husband and she's half my children. It's only recently that her mother pulled one of these false allegations of abuse moves, and there's been a no contact order for the past 6 months, and that's been psychologically torturous for our entire family because it's ripped her completely out of our family and out of our lives. I can't tell you what that's like.
Right. Well, and I don't think unless you've been in that situation, anyone can appreciate that, you know. And so, how do you approach it? Organizations such as yours, getting a lawyer involved in trying to fight it on a couple of legal and emotional fronts, I guess.
Lawyers are expensive, and a lot of our guys, like Sharon said earlier, first of all, they're supporting a second household often, plus they're paying child support to the mother of the, the I've known guys who spent $100,000, $200,000, $250,000 on court battles, and at some point, you have to say, how much can I afford?
Right.
How much can I afford to not spend on my current family in this legal fight, which makes it difficult to afford an attorney.
Right. Now, in a lot of cases, there's a guardian ad litem involved, but that's also paid for by the families, right?
Paid for by the families, once again, often paid for by the father, because the mother will plead poverty, I don't have the money, and the court looks around for another pocket, and usually it's dad's. Now, the guardian ad litem is technically supposed to represent the interests of the child. I hear over and over again from guys that they think the guardian ad litem is there to represent the interests of the mom. There was a case not too long ago where the fellow told me that the guardian ad litem says that this is in the best interest of the children, so I'm going to go talk to mom about it. Well, once again, dad is there, and this attitude pervades society. I have a severely handicapped child. When he lives with his mother's now, but when he was younger, I was the one who took him to his doctor's appointments and hospital visits and that sort of thing. And I can remember a social worker came down to interview me, and she said, well, where's mom? And I said, well, mom, it's hard for her to come to the hospital, so I'm here. And she said, but you're just the father. And that's the crux of it right there. Just the father. That kind of thing is just so wrong. Right. Children have two parents who are equal, and one is not more important than the other. We're not against mothers, okay, but what we want is equal treatment for dad as well.
Okay.
And for the people to understand that the children need to have mom and dad equally, or roughly equally as possible involved in their life, so both can practice their parenting styles, because moms and dads parent differently.
Sure. Okay. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time, and we could go on and on and on about this because it is such a involved and important issue. But I want to thank all three of you for being here tonight. And if you'd like more information on this, we've been putting this up throughout the half hour, but it's dadsofwisconsin.org. www.dadsofwisconsin.org, although nowadays I think you can just type in dadsofwisconsin.org and it'll take you right to it. So anyway, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, Steve Dedow from the school board will be joining us. We'll be right back.
Dear Mom and Dad, well, I finally have some time off, so I'm writing to tell you that I'm doing well. We have good days and bad days over here. We try to remember the good ones and get through the bad ones. Mostly we have each other, and that's what keeps us going. And Mom, since you asked, if anyone wants to help, just tell them to contact the USO. You can't believe how much they do for us. With love, your son, Michael.
Every year, the U.S. Department of the Treasury receives about 1.4 million reports of problems with paper checks. Checks can be lost, stolen, or delayed. If you still receive Social Security payments by paper check, Treasury wants you to know about a safer, more convenient way to get your money. The Direct Express Prepaid Debit MasterCard. The Direct Express card is new and is available to anyone receiving Social Security benefits, even if you don't have a bank account. Your monthly benefits will be automatically placed onto your card account each month on the day your money is due. While other debit cards cost money, it is possible to use the Direct Express card for free to make purchases, pay bills, and get cash at thousands of locations nationwide. There are no sign-up or monthly account fees. No more waiting for the mail or worrying about lost or stolen checks. Call 1-877-212-9991 or visit www.usdirectexpress.com.
We were in an emergency situation. We don't have extra. We have a little bit of water and a little bit of food. A meeting place, no.
No.
I don't think we have a first aid kit.
We have tuna fish, we have
Right.
beans, we have canned tomatoes,
True.
you know.
That's true, but that's really not survival food. Tomato paste.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And as promised, Steve Dedow from the Oshkosh Area School District Board of Education is here. And thanks for being here.
You betcha.
You're
Thank
always
you.
a fun guest to have. Want to start out by just asking, you were first elected in April, and so you've got about 3.5 months under your belt now since you've actually been sworn into office. How's it been going so far? Is it what you expected?
It seems longer. It's very challenging. It's very interesting. I'm kind of into problem solving, and it's interesting to see the different chemistry of the board members that we have on there now. I think there's much more of a positive outlook coming through somewhat with the school board. I really like the discussions. I miss Dr. Lang, but Dr. Viget is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's going to be a really good uniter on a number of ways. So
We'll be having Dr. Vigo on in a couple of weeks, and so I've not met him yet. I've not even had a chance to talk with him. So
he's a storyteller.
I'm anxious to meet him and learn a little bit more about him. And we had such a great working relationship with Dr. Lang when she was here for those 2 years almost. And I'm looking forward to kind of developing that with Dr. Vigut as well. So have you found the school district waters difficult or challenging to navigate, or not so bad yet?
I think
The more turbulent waters are probably ahead.
very definitely they are. I think the board itself is resolved to fixing some long-term problems, and we're taking some tentative steps, but we're doing some decent planning on it prior. There's a lot of positive things that we've already accomplished in 3 months. Some debt restructuring, which will save over $1 million for the district. The sale of the Lincoln School property at 1.4. The hiring of all these new administrators, that was like one huge problem. And at the end of the day, even with hiring all these new administrators, it ended up saving us $63,000 for the district. And we got some top grade people coming in. So I think we're making some really decent progress on some things. It could be as small as like an actual energy uses guidelines, which was enacted as a policy that saved us $60,000 just on electricity. We have to take it to scale. Washington Elementary going to SAGE, no F policies with athletics, a new generator. They didn't have one for the IT department for backing up data. One of the things that was just yesterday we were discussing was online education, and Dr. Vigut suggested it, and I think it's a really great idea, is we've got a policy now about online education. And it gives the district the opportunity to have many more programs which would be available if you don't have enough kids that are interested in it, but a kid wants to take Russian or something, architecture, and that wouldn't be offered in the classroom. They have the option of taking that via online. And Dr. Vuga suggested that he was considering that it would be a good idea to have it be mandatory that the students take at least one online course. And I thought that was a really good idea. I myself, my wife, a lot of my friends, we've all done online training after our regular education, to keep up new training and stuff. And that's the idea here, is to get the kids ready for the 21st century. So we're a decade into the 21st century.
Yeah.
Let's boldly move into the 90s or something, But I have a very positive outlook on this. Some of the discussions in closed session get somewhat heated, but everybody brings something to the table, and there's a wealth of experience there. There's a wealth of optimism there. Some of the naivete of the new board members and stuff has actually been a plus, because we're looking at things from a completely different angle than people who have been seasoned and sitting on this board for a while.
Sure. Well, those are good thoughts. Now, you mentioned the board meeting yesterday. Of course, we're taping this on August 5th, and on August 4th, you guys, one of the things of many that you did was you hired some top administrators. You hired, one of them was a deputy superintendent, and that person that you selected was, or that you voted on to hire, was Dr. David Gundlach. Now, viewers may remember that Dr. Gundlach was 2 years ago actually offered the position as the superintendent when Dr. Heilman left. He had accepted. Then a certain school board member at the time started, whining about possible conflict of interest, and he was belly aching about that. And it turns out there was no conflict of interest, but after all of that, and we don't know if it was related to that or not, but it certainly, the timing was interesting, I think. Dr. Gundlach withdrew his application saying, it's not the right fit right now. And hence then along came Betty Lang. Now he's coming back, and he's going to be the deputy superintendent. And I think, based on, I remember when I covered the Menasha School District, which is where he's coming from, I covered the school board meetings up there. And I think this man has incredible talent, and I think he brings a lot of intelligence and expertise to the position. Talk a little bit, if you would, Steve, now that I've said all that, about the people that you've selected as of yesterday's board meeting, and what they bring to the table, why these were good choices.
Well, like you said, David, Dr. Gulach from Menasha, what I'm excited about there is that this deputy superintendent position actually incorporates two previous positions. The executive director of administration, which was Mrs. Vickman's job, and the IT directorship. So we're actually getting a 2-for-1 bang for our buck here, and it actually saves the district $40,000 in expenses on administrators. We did not have an IT director, and I am a very big proponent of technology, and I really believe that we're falling behind. The entire country's falling behind on this. And as you know, David was the director of technology in Menasha, as well as a host of other things, curriculum and everything else up there. So he is very talented, very an expert in his fields, and we were very lucky to be able to get him. Robert Tess from our business services manager has gotten many awards. He's definitely got the math chip, and he's, I believe, this far away from getting licensed in this. And once again here we were getting a 2-for-1 deal. The idea is this man has never been a business services manager before. So this was Dr. Vigut's suggestion, and the board, he was the second guy that on the list. The first person that they interviewed that came the closest to getting the job ended up saying something like to the fact of, well, this would be a good stepping stone for me, and that was it. Then, all right, let's move to number 2. Anyway, the business services position, what we're going to do with this is for the cost of what Scott Altman, the previous business service manager is, We're bringing in Tess, and we're bringing in a mentor for him, a guy who does have experience as business services, kind of like a Betty Lang position. Both those positions together will equal what the cost of Scott Altman's was. The idea here is to, and this is the overall feeling of the board and administration, is we need to create a situation of stability here. We've got a younger guy coming in as business services manager who's definitely got some very good smarts on him, knows what he's doing, but he doesn't have the experience. Get the mentor in here to help him with the experience, and we're going to groom him and try to keep people in this district for a long time. We want this guy to retire in this district. We want all these people to retire in this district instead of having this revolving door.
Yeah.
I mean, which has led, as you know, like in the business services thing, there was $1 million glitch a few years ago, which came at just the worst possible time.
Okay.
There's just some amazing people here that have been hired. And I mean, it was as Dr. Vugut said, he has never seen or heard of anything like this where there was just this 16 administrators just left. This gives us a great opportunity to start at ground zero with a newly rejuvenated board, a superintendent, all this new brain power coming into this, and just a whole new attitude about it.
Yeah.
We've got strategic statements which over and over talk about collaboration. We're changing the team concept. There's this division between administration, the board, teachers, everything else. We're going to try to eradicate this. I believe we can do this. I believe, and it's going to take community involvement, unifying the community with public education, and I believe we can do it.
Well, one of the things that I saw on the Northwestern's website was someone had raised a question, and I thought it was a good question, so I'll ask you. The decision to hire these folks, was that something that was a decision solely of the school board, and Dr. Vugut had no input? Did he have input? Did the district as a whole bring these people to your attention? Or was that I don't want to use the word collaborative, but I will because that's the best word for this. Was it a collaborative effort on everybody's part?
It very definitely was collaborative. There were. It depends on the particular situation of who you're talking about, like a Lakeside school teaching principal position, which I'm excited about. We created that position. We took people from the community, we took board members, we took administrators in particular fields of expertise. Dr. Vugut, who knew some people, has some connections. Mrs. Vickman, who has some connections. We got people in with the application process, and there was quite a collaborative effort here on going through the screening process. Over and over and over again, it's like, nope, this isn't good enough. Nope, this isn't good enough. We want somebody who's going to stay here. We want somebody who's going to help this district grow. So this was very much a collaborative effort.
Okay. There are some in the community, Steve, who think that this district is top-heavy with administrators. How would you respond to that?
I think that we have to look at everything. I trust administration, but at the same time, we need to verify things. I think what we have done and what we have done by these particular placement of these individuals here is in some districts, comparative to Oshkosh, it might look like we're top heavy, but then in other districts we're not. It depends on where you place your power. Without having an IT director there, we might as well just not even have computers and just give up. We need the IT director. If we're going to teach our kids about the 21st century, and obviously these children know more about computers than we do as we get older. I don't feel at this time that we are heavy on administration. And I think that the board itself has been looking at ways of financial cost streamlining. Like I said, at the end of the day here, we were able to there was 2 positions where we get 2 for 1. We end up saving the district $60,000. That's $60,000 we can pump into programs. And so I feel very good about this.
Okay, good. Well, let's talk about the budget, because that's going to be one of the biggest challenges that you'll face of many challenges. Well, let me take a look here so I don't misspeak. According to the information I dug up, Oshkosh schools are about $14 million in debt, but you know, the district is on track to be debt-free as far as, you know, from its long-term debt by 2017.
Yeah, we just redid the QZAB bond, an outstanding deal. It's akin to borrowing your kid $100 and he doesn't have to pay it back with no interest for 10 years. I mean, it would have been brain dead not to take it. And we get an additional 1.3 to pay down debt over 10 years. It's an amazing deal. So, and that was good. That'll save the district money.
Sure. So then it becomes a, you know, kind of a good versus bad scenario. You'll be debt-free from your long-term debt, you know, in another 7 years, 6.5 years. That can mean one of two things: either lower taxes for all of us who pay into this taxing authority, or you know, it puts you guys in a position where you can borrow more and take care of a lot of the long-term problems that we've had, like maintenance that's been deferred for so very many years. You know, do you have any thoughts on which way this might go? I know it's a ways off, but, you know, what's your gut kind of tell you at this juncture?
Well, it is a ways off. First off, we need to get a handle on the negotiations with the collective bargaining units, and we are doing that. I would suggest that within the next month you're going to start seeing some results on that. We need to have a handle on that because you can't really do a budget without knowing how much you're going to pay. We've already eliminated, I believe it was $1.8 million in cuts. We've built up the reserve fund again. And what we're looking at is, like I said, solutions to long-term problems. I mean, I get calls and stuff regularly from people about this and that and the other thing, and I got to tell you, you know, I make $180 a month to help balance a $110 million budget, and I'm trying to do the best job I can here, and every other board member gets the same amount. And the feeling of the board is that we need to get a handle on these long-term problems. Problems like Oak Lawn need to be looked at, addressed. I mean, that thing has been up there with problems for 15 years. We need to do something about it, one way or the other. We need to look at boundary issues. We need to look at conservation efforts. We need to look at maximizing every dollar that we have to keep the kids and the programs working effectively. And I believe this board is. We're not just saying they're rubber stamping things. We're looking and asking, and do we need to do this? Can we change this? Can we change this? And the superintendent, Betty Lang, and Dr. Viga as well, it's just been amazing, just the time that they've spent with the board members, especially the new people, and listening to our ideas and embracing some of our ideas on some of these things. One of the things you're talking about long term here, like within the budget structure, that I really am a proponent of, and I think it's a great idea, is moving the maintenance of the infrastructure for technology out of the technology budget and into the regular maintenance budget, which is, like, to me, drivers and servers and such, real infrastructure for technology is just as crucial as doors and windows.
Sure.
And what's been happening is that the technology budget always gets trimmed when budget time comes around, so they have less money to use, and when they do use the money, they're using it to maintain what we've already have that's 10 years old. We're getting nowhere.
Yeah.
If we can get that into the maintenance budget, then the money that they do have in their budget can be used for upgrades, and we could start moving forward again.
Okay.
And this is being embraced somewhat positively, not only by the superintendent, by administration, and some other of the board members. So I hope that this actually comes to fruition. As far as where our debt level is and comparative to the rest of the state, I believe we're ranked 7th lowest as far as our debt level. We have the 10th largest school district. It gives us a really good bond rating, especially as we build up our reserves again. But we're going to have to, I can see coming up with proper planning, the use of taking things to referendum and asking the community for money, selling the community on money. That Riff Road project, $15 million, is ridiculous. But if we could, I'm just speaking for myself as a single board member, but at Oak Lawn, if we could rebuild on the site, take a look at what they have there, save half that building, and do it for like around $10 million tops, with that 1.4 from Lincoln, you've already got to chop down to 8, which is almost halfway from what Riff Road was. That's giving the value to the community, and it's solving a problem. I mean, the north side is 100% capacity right now. You know, so these things need to be dealt with, and it's not going to come cheap, but it's going to come with a very good eye on cost, conservation.
Okay. One thing, we've been talking a little bit about maintenance here, and one thing that really, it infuriated me when I read it, and I'm sure it made a lot of other people upset too. The roof at Carl Traeger, it's now been determined. You must have known I was going to ask this, Steve. It's now been learned that the roof at Carl Traeger was not properly installed. Mm-hmm. It's going to cost about $500,000, mm-hmm. $500,000 to remedy this problem.
Yep.
Obviously, it's something that has to be done. It can't just be left like so many other maintenance issues in this district have. But here's what irritates me about it is, first of all, is this warranted? Because if it is, then I would think that we could go back on the warranty for the project with the contractor. Second, if it's not under a warranty, if it's not warranted, then what recourse, if any, do we have against the contractor, and will that be pursued? Or should the taxpayers in this district just eat it? And I realize we're mm-hmm. probably going to have to spend the money up front and then pursue, recouping or getting reimbursed for that, mm-hmm. Because litigation or whatever method you take is going to be dragged out, and we probably can't wait that mm-hmm. long. But are some other options being pursued to get us our money back?
Yes, I absolutely, I brought that up at a board meeting, and I brought up at the facility and finance meeting. It's the same thought. It is past the warranty,
okay.
but in the statement from the new roofing company that is doing the work, over and over within that document, there was installed incorrectly, not installed properly, omitted, deleted, over and over again. And when I read that, I'm not a lawyer, but it's like, all right, the warranty is one thing, but if we paid to have vapor barriers or certain metal work done up there, and this was not done, if things were omitted, then do we have legal recourse for this? And right now I can't comment on the legal recourse of this, but we are pursuing that.
Okay.
I don't know where we're at with it, but we are pursuing it.
Okay, all right.
I don't know if it's going to go positive, negative, but we are taking a look at it.
At least it's being looked at.
We have to.
And yeah, exactly, because why should the taxpayers in this district eat it?
Yes. You would too, if you sit there.
Absolutely.
Like be on the phone screaming at somebody about it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I have. Not about this issue, but other things I have. Other budgetary issues. We've talked about the good place that we're going to be, 7 years from now, 6.5 years from now. But what about short term? Obviously, we've got shortfalls, and there are budget crunches, and things are going to be tight, things are going to be difficult, and not so comfortable. Mm-hmm. Where are we at as we enter the upcoming budget season in a few months?
For me, I listen to the different consultants that come in and talk to us about this PMA and AFG and all these other acronyms. And to me, it looks pretty tight. The next few years are definitely going to be tight. I believe that the current board that we have are trying our damnedest to put us in a position by refinancing, by looking at conservation things, to maximize every opportunity we have. That QZAB bond that I was babbling about before, we're actively and aggressively going out and looking at other options where we could get, debt-free, interest-free loans, this kind of stuff. And if we can do that, I think that we'll be able to weather this storm, because we obviously are in an economic situation here. Right. State aid is falling, federal aid is falling. What's really happening, though, here is probably the most important thing that's happened in America in the last 100 years, and that is a complete reformation of the educational system. And we're seeing it all across the country, on the way that we view education, on the way we embrace education, on the way we fund education. there's different ways. This has got to start in Madison. It's got to start in Washington. And if it takes a little district like us to sit there and start lighting fires, well, then that's what we'll do.
You'll get your matches and
We'll get
your
our matches
gasoline, and you'll start those fires.
It's got to start somewhere. Okay. I mean, other states are looking at like using sales tax as an addition. You know, like they've got one that started in Wisconsin now with websites, a penny for the kids. If you add and you earmark and specifically state that a cent, 1 penny on the sales tax, which would bump us to 6%, would go specifically to educational reform, that would inject hundreds of millions of dollars into the educational funding system, and it's going to help to alleviate the property tax situation. The problem with using just that is in an economic situation, people buy less. So you don't have this stability that you do with the state funding. You know, when we're going through this budget process, it's like the federal government needs to be under the same restrictions that these school boards are under, where you cannot tax above a certain point.
We'll never see that,
Oh, I
Steve.
know we won't.
It's nice in theory, but we'll never see
It
that.
makes you really look at what you're doing, how you're spending your money, and how you're taxing, and how this is going to affect people. And obviously the federal government doesn't do that, but we really need to.
Yeah.
I'm optimistic about the future, but I would say that it's time to roll up our sleeves on some things, and we're all going to have to take a look at this very hard.
Okay.
You know, looking at the millage rates comparative to other school districts, we're lower. Looking at our test scores, we're higher. Our maintenance is lower. We've got problems. We need to do something about these problems.
Okay. We've only got about a minute and a half left, so I want to just touch on this. You know, you talked about bargaining with the unions and so forth. Health insurance is a huge cost for anybody, whether you're in a union, you're not in a union, it's expensive. Mm-hmm. You know, what kind of movement is being made? People have been squawking for a couple of years already, if not longer, that, you know, teachers and all union employees should be paying more toward their health insurance. Is there a movement in that direction?
I can't talk specifically about what's going on in negotiations, but we are certainly trying to move in that direction.
Okay.
The thing I wish the public understood is that I keep hearing the reference of the parallel of private industry versus public.
Yeah.
And it's just not the same. In Mercury Marine, those guys can strike, they can leave, the company can fire them. And in public entities, we have arbitration coming in, and they're going to look at the historical background. They're going to look at what Nina settled at. They're going to look at what Amro and Appleton settled at. And if we come in with just a 0%, we're going to get bent over backwards here, because these collective bargaining groups will come in and they will ask for whatever more than that, and they're going to get it because it's a yes or no thing.
Well, yeah, and you know, plus they're going to look at past deals that have been made
Yes.
too, in a quid pro quo situation.
I think
so
that,
anyway,
like I said, I think that we're going to see some movement in the next few weeks on some of these bargaining units. So,
Okay,
and it will
excellent.
be positive. In my opinion, it would be positive.
Excellent. Steve, thanks for being here.
You bet.
I'm sorry we're out of time already, but it's good stuff. Good information. So thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you.
That's going to do it for us. We will see you next time. Until then, take good care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.